You're listening to Big World Network.
Kai's Inquisition, The Blight of Shadowfall. Season 2, Episode 11. Written and read by Ton Krakowski. As Chajek and Zephyr floundered noisily in the river, Jack spotted a black mass twice their distance from the falls, resting just beneath the surface of the water. Blessed with keen eyesight in the deepening gloom, she took a half-step closer and noticed the shape begin to creep downriver toward the commotion. "There's something in the water!" she shouted, underscoring her warning by drawing her blade. She sprinted to the riverbank to intercept the oozing blob of darkness before it could reach the hopelessly entangled Chajek and Zephyr. "Get them out!" Pia yelled, frustrated that it came out in demonic since she was now battle-ready. She was caught between panic that the pair was drifting ever closer to the falls, and relief that the river was carrying them away from whatever monstrosity was now pursuing them. She abandoned Kai, who was clearly beyond her help, locked into witnessing Zephyr's panic through his eyes, and rushed to aid her companions, passing both Reynard, who was not as swift on his much shorter legs, and Kichi, who was too startled to react. Reynard hurried to Jack's side after Pia. He knew he could not easily pull even those smaller than himself from the water, but if there was to be a fight, then his slight stature and swift reflexes were an advantage, especially against larger targets. He reached the bank in time to see a huge writhing blotch of inky tentacles, eyes, and dagger-like teeth glide placidly past him, presumably intent on an easy meal. "What in the blazes is that thing?" he spat, his handsome features twisted with a mix of horror and disgust. "I don't know," Jack growled, "but we need to get its attention, make it come after us instead. I'm not going in there after it." "What are we supposed to do, wave our bare asses at it and call it a floating pile of harpy vomit?" Reynard asked scornfully. Jack looked down at him with a raised brow. "If you think it will work." Downstream, Pia quickly determined that even if she were able to reach the pair with her staff, Zephyr could not grasp it, and Chajek had been pulled under at the whim of the churning current. She planted her feet at the edge of the water and raised her arms to the sky, belting out a summoning spell in a sharp, shrieking voice. Back at the precipice, Kichi shook the numbness from his mind. What to do? What to do? He mulled over his options. He could bring down lightning upon his enemies, but that was obviously a poor choice with Zephyr and Chajek also in the water. None of Naderu's creatures were close enough to help them, although he, like Kai, carried a trident in honor of his god. Kai! He suddenly remembered that she was still bonded with Zephyr. He had intended to teach her how to sever and reinitiate the connection herself once the pterodactyl returned, but had completely forgotten about her in the confusion. He scrambled to her side, knelt, and placed his hand on her forehead. Bubbles. Cloth leached of color swept crazily through dark, roiling water. A wink of velvet sky emblazoned with stars. Kai's head swam as silent images flashed before her, like lightning on a moonless night. Her view jerked from one nightmarish scene to the next as Zephyr fought to free himself from halfling and river alike. Her perspective abruptly steadied, cleared. In that moment she saw Chajek, finally unsnarled from the pterodactyl, give a silent scream as he was pulled backward, his eyes panicked as he vanished from sight into the swirling darkness. "Chajek!" Kai sputtered as she reflexively sat up, almost knocking heads with Kichi as she did so. Disoriented, Her stomach flopped from yet another unexpected change in viewpoint, causing her to yank her head to the side and retch. Sounds assailed her ears, splashing, screeching, shouting. "Help them!" she heard Kichi wail. "I am no fighter, but you must hurry!" At the river, Jack and Reynard found rocks and twigs, whatever was within reach, to throw at the creature floating downstream. Reynard considered throwing a knife, but he was sure to lose the blade, and was almost as sure that it would not deter the beast in the slightest. As Pia finished her spell, 2 eagles materialized before her in a shimmery burst of energy. She directed them to pull Zephyr and Chajek from the water, silently praying that there was still time to save them. Kai wiped her mouth, pushed Kichi out of the way, and staggered to her feet. She pulled 2 arrows from her quiver and knocked them both as she made her way to the river's edge. While she did recognize the demon creature in the water, she was still fuzzy and could not recall from her studies exactly what she had learned about it, or even its species. She fired both arrows at once, skewering 2 of the creature's many eyes. Although its ghastly writhing intensified, there was no other indication that the beast even noticed the injury. Desperation washed over her. She dropped her bow and pushed her palms, fingers held wide, at the demon, calling upon Naderu to give her strength. A ray of crimson burst from her hands and enveloped the creature. She could hear it howl in pain, hear its flesh sizzle with divine power. The demon retreated into the depths of the river and out of sight. "No!" Kai bellowed in frustration. She spun from the water in time to see an eagle drop a limp and dripping Zephyr into Kichi's outstretched arms. Torn between her instinct to care for her charge and her duty to rescue her companion, Kai felt paralyzed, still unable to think clearly. Pia frantically searched the river for Chajek. He hadn't surfaced, and the second conjured eagle was flying out over the edge of the cliff rather than looking for him upriver. "Wait. A location spell. I can cast a location spell," Pia realized, condemning her slow thinking. She rummaged through her belongings, found the ingredients for the spell, and dropped to her knees to begin preparations. After filling a small vessel with river water, scattering forget-me-not petals across the surface, and floating a needle made of bone in the center of the bowl, Pia spoke Chajek's name and watched the needle slowly rotate. It pointed out over the waterfall toward the eye. As if in confirmation of her spell, Pia saw her eagle fold its wings and rocket out of sight beyond the cliff. When it reappeared a few minutes later, it dumped a small, curved blade on the ground next to her before dissolving in the same shimmery light from which it came. Pia reluctantly picked up the blade. It was the hidden dagger from Chajek's necklace.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
You're listening to Big World Network.